Good afternoon, everyone. Thank you so much for tuning in. This is our Facebook Live Q&A series where we are proud to feature some innovators in our business community. Today, I'm so privileged to be joined by Bruce Schronce, who's the founder of StrongLead and also the Catawba Valley Leadership Foundation. If we've never met before, allow me to introduce myself. I'm Lindsay Kiesler, President and CEO of the Chamber of Catawba County. It is such a privilege every day to work alongside of strong leaders in this community. And you're going to hear from a couple of them. First and foremost, being our sponsor for our May series, Jay Brown. He is the founder and owner of Jay Brown Realtors. So Jay, I'm going to turn it over to you to say a couple words.
Hey, Lindsay. Hello, Facebook. It's good to be back here again, and I am excited to welcome Bruce today. He's a friend and a leader, and I think you guys are going to get a lot of good information from my friend Bruce, who is a strong leader in our community. So back to you, Lindsay.
Jay, thank you again for being our sponsor and for helping us kick off this series, especially in the month of May. If anyone out there is watching and if you've enjoyed this series, we would, inquire. We'd love to welcome other sponsors and other hosts for the series. So I want to encourage you, if you are watching, engage with us. So Facebook, a little bit about Facebook, they really like when individuals comment and like and share the broadcast. And we want to make sure that more people view this video, and those, especially those that need the encouragement and the inspiration from today's talk. I mean, today we're going to be discussing how one can be transformational and lead during challenging times, and times such as the last 8 weeks that we've all been experiencing unprecedented situations as a result of this pandemic. But so just, if you don't mind, comment, tag somebody who really needs to hear this, share the video or start a watch party. And if you can hear us loud and clear, give us some likes and some hearts. So at this time, I am going to live pull it up, and I'm going to share the broadcast myself to give you the opportunity to share it as well. Also, to ensure that we are receiving comments, because we encourage you to ask questions of our speakers, go ahead and if you're watching, throw a comment in the comment box and tell us where you're watching the video from. So one thing that we've noticed over the last week that we've done this is we've had viewers from other states that have tuned in to hear from our guests. So if you are watching this from your office, maybe you're back at work and working in your office. Also, maybe you're working from home, as most of us are still very much remote. Throw that in there. Maybe you're in another state and you're watching this broadcast. We welcome you to share that with us. So I'm able to see comments. So wonderful. Thank you all for that. So without further ado, I want to introduce my special guest. And this individual has certainly spoken into me and mentored me over the last, I'd say 5 or 6 years that I've known him. Bruce Schronce is, like Jay said, an incredible leader. He's a visionary, and he's rooted in his passion for this community and for business. Bruce, just a little bit about him. He's the founder and CEO of StrongLead and also the Catawba Valley Leadership Foundation. They provide world-class leadership development in this community based out of Hickory, North Carolina. He values collaboration. He also values support of community. So Bruce, thank you so much for joining me today.
Thank you, Lindsay. It is great to be here. I'm very honored.
Awesome. Well, let's have a little bit of fun before we dive into the Q&A regarding innovation and creativity and leading through times of ambiguity. So with that, as we've started each of our Facebook Lives, we're going to do some rapid fire Q&A, kind of get to know Bruce in 5 minutes or less. Bruce, you ready?
I guess I'm a little nervous because every time you say we're going to try something for fun, I'm never really sure where that's going, but I'm ready.
You're a trooper. You're a trooper. All right, here we go. All right. So first question, what has been your favorite quarantine snack?
Popcorn.
What is one cause that is near and dear to your heart?
This community.
Mm. What is the most important quality of leadership?
I think it starts with identity.
Beach or the mountains?
I'm a mountains guy.
If you had a superpower, what would it be?
Healing. I've always thought that would be a great superpower to have. Healing.
Amen. Amen. All right. What's your favorite beverage, Bruce?
Simple, but water.
With this being Mother's Day week, what is your favorite lesson you learned from your mom?
That I couldn't outrun her when I thought I could.
Oh, she used a switch or a fly swatter?
A hickory switch, and she was much faster than I thought she was at the time.
That's great. That's great. What is one leader you admire the most?
That's really evolved, especially most recently in my most recent years, but my wife.
Mm. What's one thing you can't live without?
That would be my faith.
Early bird or night owl?
I'm an early bird.
What's one of the most random facts about you, Bruce?
Again, probably back related to my wife, is that I fell in love with her in the second grade.
Oh, that's awesome. And if you don't know Bruce, Bruce is from Catawba County, which is where a lot of his affection for this community comes from. What was the last book that you read?
Experiencing God. I just finished a 12-week study series on that.
If you were famous, what would you be famous for?
Making Catawba County strong.
I like it.
Part of that.
I like it. All right. And what is the bravest thing you've ever done?
Gosh, that would be starting the business of StrongLead and Catawba Valley Leadership Foundation. It was a bigger vision than I could get my head around, and but I knew it was something we were supposed to do. So I think that was it. But I was still very fearful of it.
Awesome, Bruce. I know that entrepreneurs in general, like you said, you just take the leap. You have a vision and you have a passion for what you do. One of the things I love the most about working with entrepreneurs is their desire, their innate desire for enhancing the lives of those around them. And I know for a fact that you have done that, and that is your life work. So tell the viewers why StrongLead. So you talked a little bit about your calling, your vision that you had for this business, and also for the nonprofit foundation that you guys have propped up. So why StrongLead and the Catawba Valley Leadership Foundation? What drives this passion you have for leadership development?
I guess it really started the heaviest about 20 years ago. And I was exposed to leadership all over the world, and just watching good leadership, strong leadership versus bad leadership and weak leadership, and the results of that on their sphere of influence. Just began to take notice of it, pay attention to it, tried to learn from the good, the bad, and the ugly, and it just kind of became an increasing passion for me.
You know, with that, Bruce, with that passion that you have, what then did you translate into your business? So what are the nuts and bolts, and what value do you guys bring as StrongLead?
Yeah. The first thing is that we really believe in helping an individual, an organization, or a community really understand their identity and the vision of who they are. So often in our lives, we're so busy living our lives that we don't really spend time to work on some of those things that are really critical to us. So I think starting there with a vision and an identity of an individual, organization, or community, and then from there, once we understand that vision, understanding where the gaps and that vision, and what does it take to close those, and the intentionality of that. And then thirdly, being able to work with developing leaders and high performance teams that are actually able to close that gap. They're really committed to that identity and that vision. They understand the gaps, and then they begin to really put action and commitment to that.
Bruce, what do you find is the biggest differentiator? So when you guys start working with a team, maybe they have most of the time, I'm sure they have high potential, right? You've got certainly have a leader that values professional and leadership development in their team. What do you see is the barriers from getting to, having potential to being high performing? What do you see as the key to that?
Yeah, that's a great question, because you're right. Most leaders that we work with, they're in those roles because they've been great performers. And but that doesn't necessarily make them a great leader. There's a whole different set of qualities and values and competencies that come along with that. So shaping those, again, starts with, back to what I said before, with their identity, helping them really identify with their own leadership, their own nature, their own character, what's good. Usually it's all good stuff, but they don't have a lot of confidence in that. So it's the confidence of that identity. Then it's the competency and the skills, not to perform a task, but to be able to lead other people. And that's very different. Mm-hmm. And then thirdly would be the credibility. How do you develop credibility as a leader? And that's really a combination of managing the other two, and then letting people know for sure that it's not just about getting a task done, but it's about helping them be the best individual they can be in that process.
Bruce, this is the most common thing when it comes to like human resources and promoting people. We often promote our highest performing individuals, right? Take a salesperson, for example. You identify that they are killing it, right? They're meeting their goals every month. They're certainly achieving the overarching goals of the organization, if not exceeding that. And then what do? We often say, hey, why don't you need to be a manager, right? You need to be a VP or a director. And then they get into those roles, and now they're responsible for leading and influencing other people, and they fail miserably. Or they don't, it's not that they fail, but they don't necessarily achieve their potential. Is that what you're referring to whenever you talk about role leaders versus high performing leaders?
Yeah, absolutely. And anybody can be a leader. It's just, what are you leading at? What are you good at? What are you created at for? What's your passion in your part of the role of leadership? And so it's when you think about businesses, talking about the right people on the right bus in the right seats, that's all such a critical part of that. And sometimes they might be in the right seat, but they just need help on those new set of competencies they need to develop in managing people versus just performing a job.
That's great. What makes you guys unique? I mean, clearly it's more than just, webinars or facilitating, development training. I mean, you guys truly sort of wrap around a team and customize your approach to that team that you're working with. So why don't you give us a little bit more details about how you guys approach it differently?
Yeah, sure. I think probably the one thing is that for each of the people on our team, we feel like it's a calling. It's what we're supposed to do. It's hard for us to imagine doing anything else, whether it's my partners, our employees. We have a young lady who's 20 years old, who's bilingual. She's our administrative assistant. And this young lady she's so much smarter than I am, first and foremost. But it's funny, when she came into the organization, she immediately felt like this is where she was supposed to be. She had to be there to be a part of this. And just to watch her grow through the process and really engage with that, I think that's one thing. So there's just a real sense that it's our passion, it's our calling. We don't have a choice. We have to do it. The second thing is that we're very focused in what we're doing. We really care about our community first and foremost. We really want that to be the focus of what we do, is develop businesses, organizations, schools, nonprofits, whatever. We really want to develop those organizations, but our focus is absolutely leadership, because we know that we don't have necessarily it's not our authority in each of those organizations or those areas, but leadership is our authority. So we really want to be able to come along beside the heroes, and we have an unbelievable written law among us that we never want to be the hero. We want to help those people be the heroes in their organization. And so I think that's the second thing. That's the way we approach it. And then lastly is the processes. And Lindsay, you know this because you guys have helped me shape these processes. And it's a very holistic process. It's about the individual, the organization, or the family and the community. It's about their identity. It's about their family of team that they're around. It's the growth and how do they specifically develop through that with a very intentional process. And then it's about the leadership influence they have. And then ultimately, we really love this to connect it with the community. So we take it from the micro to the macro and everything in between there. So I think that's what's worked for us, and it's really been a learned process. It's been a journey.
You know, Bruce, it's not often that you go through leadership training that, you know, talks about you as a whole person, right? We often focus on development training that works on us at work, right? How we perform in a professional setting, or how influential we are as a leader. But we forget that half of ourselves, if not more than half of ourselves, is outside of work. And you can't, you know, I've often heard, you know, separate yourself, right? Leave home at home and leave work at work. We can't do that, can we? I mean, we can't do that as individuals or as leaders.
Yeah. One of my favorite terms that I've received from actually one of our clients is integrated life. And it's so critical when you think about integrated, integrity, and integrity means wholeness, completion, pure, undivided. So you can't take those things and separate them. You know, they're all part of our life. They're all things that we have to consider at the deepest levels, because it's going to influence how we handle things, how we deal with circumstances, how we deal with people in relationships. And so you can't separate those. And the worst thing we can do is try and teach people to separate them. It's more about the integration, you know, not being segmented into different parts.
And Bruce, even I'm thinking of now, over the past 8 weeks, we have literally had to thrust into this work-life integration, because you have individuals that are working remotely, and you also have schools that are closed and childcare facilities that are closed. And so they're having to wear many hats, not just lead teams, but, you know, teach school and, you know, all the above. And so I think more often than not, if companies or business hasn't recognized the fact that individuals also have lives beyond work, then they are realizing it now. What do you think?
Yeah, that's so true. One of my favorite coaching sessions was one I had yesterday, and it was with an executive lady, and she is a mom, and she's got 2 little children, and she was pregnant. And our Zoom meeting she was in the bathroom of her house, and she was in the bathroom because that's where her router was at. She had the best connectivity, and it was the quietest place that she had in the house. And so just watching her handle that, and she was talking about how these restrictions have been so frustrating to her, and just being able to coach her through the process of reframing that, and what has been the benefits and the value of this. And one of the most obvious is that while she's due to deliver her child in June, she has the opportunity to be at home, to be safe, to, you know, having a relaxed environment, no pressures on her from the workplace, and So once you started reshaping that, she started thinking about it with gratitude versus regret. So
So literally meeting people where they are, and then pushing them beyond what they even thought that their potential is. I think that's the most powerful, so probably the most powerful and rewarding piece of what you do, is
yeah.
seeing people see beyond what presently is. And I've heard you use that phrase quite often,
I
Bruce.
remember, Lindsay, when we were working on what it would look like to have the strongest leadership culture we could have, we talked about transformational leaders, and we talked about, well, what does it look like to be the kind of leader we're talking about? One of the words that we used was transcendent.
Mm.
They didn't just see what was in front of them immediately, but they could see what was to come. My wife just finished writing a book on some tough things that we lived through. And one of the things about that is not being so quick to get through the circumstances to get to the other side, but how to enjoy those circumstances as you're going through it, how to not be robbed of that joy even through that, knowing that you are going to get through it at some point. And typically, if we do it the right way, we're going to be stronger on the other end.
I think that is so true. Disruption causes discomfort.
Yeah.
You often look back and say, how comfortable and my life was and how complacent I was before whatever the disruptive event that happens. And most personally now, it is this pandemic, and
Right.
how life has completely changed. The way we do business has completely changed. But um, I've seen how businesses have pivoted and
Mm.
innovated and shown creativity. And I don't feel that they would have made the significant changes or have found these different revenue streams or changed their company cultures as they have without having experienced this disruption or this suffering in that we're in now.
Mm.
Bruce, what just in thinking of that, um, how can leaders, why is it important, first of all, that they leverage disruption
Yeah.
for the
That's a
good?
great
And
question.
then how does one do that versus the other option being kind of a shrink back or a paralysis, if you will, of
Yeah.
fear or the unknown?
Yeah. One of the things that we work with leaders is understanding their presence, no matter what the circumstances or the situations are. And so a lot of times character can be shaped by a crisis, but it can also reveal problems in our character in a crisis, right? And even as a company ourselves, at the beginning of this year, we were thinking about what are the things that we needed to do for this year. And we'd had some growth, pretty rapid growth over the last 2 years. And we're thinking, boy, we really need to be able to pause and slow down just a little bit so that we can get our processes and systems and things like that into a better place. And we'd never done any marketing or branding, and we need to do that. And so when this happened, we started saying, okay, gosh, this is changing our business, it's changing our revenue structure, but what do we need to do? Let's not just be caught up in the minute. Again, that transcendent leader, how do we think from a transcendent perspective? And it really immediately took us into some of those processes and systems that we needed to do, whether it's a great time to work on the pipeline of business, maybe, for example, instead of just handling business. And so, just to be able to see that, I just got through before this meeting coaching a guy who's owns multiple automotive dealerships. And he was talking about some of the changes that they've gone through. And really, he said it's tweaked their business so much that they're already showing themselves as being much greater in their processes than what they were at the beginning of this. So,
Wow.
Just reframing that, thinking about, again, not just immediate, but how do we shape for the future of this? And that leadership presence has always got to be aware of that we don't get sucked into despair or woe is me, the sky is falling, but rather, okay, how is this an opportunity? How do I make the best of this? And it's intentional. It's intentional, and sometimes it's a whole lot easier to talk about than it is to actually do it.
You're so right. I think we've all experienced a lot of that, kind of pushing forward regardless if you know all the answers, right? And there's been one quote that I've seen, that actually a chamber colleague in another state shared. She said, "We are drowning in information and we're starving for wisdom."
Yeah, boy,
And
that's so
so,
true.
oh man, and now your leaders can be certain in times like this that are so we haven't seen a model before us, right? They're unprecedented. We haven't experienced it. There's no playbook for it. There's so much uncertainty. And so often there are a lot of opinions and assumptions, but we lack facts. And
Right.
so how do you lead through that? And I think you're right on assessing, maintaining your leadership presence, and then looking to seize the opportunities and then taking it, right? Moving forward and pushing through. So in that, Bruce, what are some ways that you've seen transformational leaders emerge during this time?
That's a great question. I'll maybe answer that in some different groups of leaders that I've been working with.
Great.
One of the things that we did during this time, since we had a pause with some of our existing clients, we decided, well, okay, how can we help with other people? So one of the things we started doing was some complimentary coaching for Hickory Young professionals, for example. This last 2 weeks have been a blast doing some of the coaching with them, and just watching them transform. And what really happened, the process I've seen that's been good for them is that in most cases, when they called for the complimentary coaching, they were a little bit intimidated first, but they still stepped into it regardless. They still committed to it. And the second thing was, one of the reasons they were really committed is that they didn't know what they would even need coaching on. So as we took them through a quick set of questions, it began to reveal things and make them start thinking about their life a little bit differently. What's really critical to them, what's really important to them, what are short-range goals, what are long-term goals, what are things that need to change in their life. And it's kind of like a funnel where we kept asking questions until it got down to the narrow neck of that funnel. And now they're at the priorities. This is what I need more than anything else. And then that opens the bottom part of that funnel back up to all the opportunities and what are specific steps that they need to take to move forward with that. So I think that's one thing in this. And then thinking about some of our more existing long-term clients, they're really opening themselves up to new education, if you will, or new learning, because we're exposed to things that we haven't been exposed before. I mean, I think this is the first time that, when we started this, you said, welcome to the green room. And I said, I don't think I've ever been in a green room before. And I learned very quickly that I'm becoming one of the Zoom specialists in my sphere of influence, which says I must be dealing with a lot of older people too, because the younger people are so much more adapted to it. But just exposing yourself to new leaders, to new learning is so critical right now. That what's something that I can learn and be different with. And that's what I like about what's even some of the things that's shaping in our community is that we're learning from each other. We're learning, businesses are learning from schools and vice versa, or nonprofit organizations. Older generations are learning from new generations and vice versa. The diversity that we're exposed to right now. So I think it's just a great time with our community because we have become very open to how do we truly collaborate together. And so I've seen this time of COVID-19 been an opportunity for people to explore those avenues and make
I've always heard if you're not leading if you're not learning.
Yeah,
And I think that definitely is a differentiator between someone that you're successful, but I think if you really focus on drilling into those shadow areas in your life, that's where you you've really shined and become influential and strong.
Yeah.
So I don't want to, we've got a couple minutes left, so I don't want to miss out talking about the Catawba Valley Leadership Foundation. So give sort of an overview of CVLF, if you will,
Okay.
and help us understand what that is and how that works in concert with StrongLead.
Yeah, great. So the vision is the same. It's all about great leadership for strong communities, but it is our nonprofit arm of StrongLead. And so where we work primarily with businesses that have budgets for leadership development, there are a lot of other community organizations that don't necessarily have the budgets because they're nonprofits, they're schools, government, different civic institutions, and so forth. And those are some of the places where we want them to have great, strong leadership, right? So we, at the beginning of this, I formed the Catawba Valley Leadership Foundation at the same time we formed StrongLead years ago, but I really didn't know what that would develop into. Matter of fact, I didn't want to do both. But again, it was one of those things where I knew that I had to, I didn't have a choice, I just had to do it. And we began to understand it. So Catawba Valley Leadership Foundation allows us to go into schools, work with them at a different level. We're working with juniors and seniors in high schools, doing a very holistic leadership development process. We're working with nonprofit organizations. An example was Safe Harbor. We work with them, and then they have invited 15 other nonprofit organizations in this leadership cohort. So it really expands that. The leadership conference that we started last year, and that's part of, again, partnering with the different organizations, chamber, EDC, the universities, and things like that, and having a very specific leadership conference for the Catawba Valley region. And so it just helps us to be able to continue that leadership development holistically without restrictions. So we try to commit about a half and half percentage of our time between those two.
That's great. Leadership development through business and community. I appreciate your work that you do, Bruce, and your whole team, Chuck, Chad, and Ethan, and Pilar, all the above. I'm just very appreciative to partner with you guys and work with you. Last question, really, speaking of community and speaking of your vision to make this the strongest community of leaders in the world.
Yeah.
I've heard you say that, Bruce, and I'm all for it. Leave our viewers with one kind of final word on that vision, and then in terms of getting there, how do we get there?
Yeah, that's a great question. You know what it makes me think about the most, Lindsay, is when we had the Southern Growth Policies Board come in about 6 or 7 years ago, maybe, and we hired them to do a survey of our community. And so they didn't come in with the answers. They came in and surveyed our community to receive the answers. And they said, one of the most powerful things that you guys need to do to shape your community, and they said, we will not bet against you on this either, because you've got everything in place, is to embrace and develop your leaders, young and old, the emerging leaders, the existing leaders, the legacy leaders, all of that, to embrace and equip and educate them, help those leaders become the strongest they can be, help them to really collaborate, because we've always had great leaders in our community, but sometimes we didn't always collaborate, not because we didn't want to, but a lot of times we were just living great and everything was good and we didn't necessarily need to. It's an age in our lives when we have to collaborate. And then the other is to create, capture, and tell great stories. So someone asked me recently, how will you know the measurables of that? And I said, well, the first thing is that we all have a collective, strong vision for our community. And secondly, we have a commitment of activity to that. And then third is going to come later down the road. And that's that we actually do become one of the strongest communities in the world. And I see that it's being strong families, strong businesses, strong government, strong schools. And I think it's our communities typical of the businesses we work with. None of them are failing organizations. They're good organizations, but they have a desire to be best. And I think that's the heart and soul of our community also.
That's great. Again, Bruce, thank you for your life work. Thank you for your passion, and I can capture that vision and come along with you on that, making this region the strongest region in the world. So thank you for that. Um, you guys have a podcast
We
that
do.
you have. So how can someone, first of all, how can they tune in to learn more from your podcast work? And also how can they continue, or how can they engage with you if they're interested in learning in their own leadership development?
Great, thank you. One of the best ways, probably the simplest, is to go to our website. So we have a StrongLead website, and we have a Catawba Valley Leadership Foundation, and that gets you connected to everything that we're involved in, whether it's the podcast, annual conferences, high performance leadership programs, individual coaching, all the services that we have to offer. That would be one of the easiest ways. One of my favorite ways is pick up the phone and call us. I love to be able to talk to people about what's going on in their lives and their organizations and their businesses, their community. We've said over and over that one of the most greatest things about what we do is that we're learning at the same time as we're developing. Every time we sit down with an individual or an organization, we're constantly receiving, and it's just an ongoing process. So yeah, just get in touch with us through the website, StrongLead or Catawba Valley Leadership Foundation.
Awesome. Thank you again for Bruce for hopping on here with me today. I want to say another special thank you to J. Brown Realtors for sponsoring our May series. And then if you enjoyed this, we look forward to hosting other guests. We have another guest coming up this Thursday, so check our events on Facebook at I think a different time this Thursday, 3 o'clock, I believe, instead of 2 o'clock. But if you enjoyed this video and you know someone that really needs to hear this message, tag them in the comments. Also, feel free to share this post as well, and give us some, leave any questions that you have, and we'll see if we can get those answered from the StrongLead team. I am being told it's May 14th at 2 p.m. And we actually have the privilege of interviewing Jennifer Stiver and Rebecca Stiver, the co-owners of Two Pink Magnolias, and how they have been innovative during the past or since March through COVID-19 pandemic. So again, thank you to all of our viewers. Thank you to my guests today, Bruce. I appreciate it very much. Thank you for your partnership. And we at this time will sign off. So tune in on Thursday. Thank you.
Thanks, Lindsay.